Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Today's date is Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everyone please stand up? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Thank you. In the event of an emergency, please follow the exit signs that are provided in this room and throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting this room, the main exits are located in the front and the rear of this building. Do not use the elevators during an emergency. This meeting is being recorded and streamed online. If you do not want to wait to hear the outcome of any given petition, you can call the town clerk's office tomorrow after 9 a.m. to learn the outcome if you choose to leave. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Chairman Bray?
Present.
Member Schubert?
Present.
Member Phillips?
Present.
Member Gergen?
Present.
And Ellen Parker is not in today.
Thank you. In addition, we are joined here tonight by the town zoning enforcement officer, Daniel Latowski, and Deputy Town Attorney Nora Robshaw. The first item on tonight's agenda is approval of the minutes of May 14th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Member Schubert, second by Member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That has passed 4-0. The first petition on tonight's agenda is for 90 Turnberry Drive. Will the applicant please come to the microphone? 9 Turnberry Drive. All right, we'll move past that item on the agenda. We'll revisit it at the end of the meeting if anyone appears for that. The next item on tonight's agenda is 140 Canal Side Terrace. Will the applicant please come to the microphone? Please state your name and address into the microphone, and also write it down on the sheet provided on the podium.
Joe Sierra, 140 Canal View Terrace, and it's in Amherst.
All right, do you want to tell us about your request?
Well, we're requesting a variance for our privacy fence around our pool. It exceeds the 6 foot, it's 8 foot in height. We contracted with Beauty Pools, and they built our pool. They did a nice job, and they recommended a contractor, Juniors, and I guess I wrongfully assumed that he was going to check with the town and see what the codes were before he built the fence. And I mean, I thought you'd have to get a permit for that as well, which apparently you don't. And well, so he built the fence, and that's where we stand. It's a very tasteful fence. It complements our house. It blocks the West Canal Marina, which is across the canal from our house. Our neighbors all like it. They don't have any real issue with it. And it really only affects our neighbors on either side. It doesn't really affect anybody else. It's not like we're like right in the middle of the subdivision where it would affect 15 houses or something. So that's why we're requesting a variance.
Is there any member of the board who would like to ask the applicant any questions?
I just
Good evening. Do you have anything from the neighbors on each side of you?
Yeah, we do have letters from our neighbors.
Just on each side?
The one on what would be the east side of us, we have a letter from. And the one on the other side, no, he was out of town. So we didn't have time, had to put this together in a day, so I didn't bring anything with me from him. I did contact him and speak with him. He said he had no problem with it.
And the neighbor across the street.
And the neighbor across the street, and then some.
Yeah, I was just asking both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any more questions from the board? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Would any member of the board like to make a motion or have a comment?
I'll make a motion in a minute, but I just had a question of Mr. Ulatowski. 8-foot fences are allowed in, is it adjoining commercial? I mean, they are allowed in the town.
They are permitted in our commercial districts, particularly when they're adjoining residential, not in the opposite direction.
So it's not a unique situation necessarily.
It's not unique when adjacent to commercial. In this situation, this is unique.
Resident, yeah, okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Member Schubert, second by Member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Pass 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The third item on tonight's agenda is 24 Monarch Drive. Would the applicant please come to the podium? Please state your name and address into the microphone and also write it down on the sheet provided for you on the podium.
Hi, I'm representing Rebecca Dominowski at 24 Monarch Drive. My name is Scott Zaccardi with Matt and Son Home Improvement.
Go on.
Okay. Ms. Dominowski, she's looking to have a deck built in her backyard where it's highlighted in yellow there. There is an issue going on the upper back side of her house, seeing that she's on the corner lot due to the variance in the back corner. I've been in communication with Dan, trying to figure out the best way to go about it. So nothing's been built yet until we have approval, if based on tonight. So drawings were submitted based on what you have, trying to see if she is allowed to proceed with what's laid out there.
Is the homeowner here tonight?
I don't think so.
Does any member of the board have a question for the presenter? Okay. Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Okay. Do we want to make should I close the hearing, or do we want to wait for the applicant at a subsequent meeting?
So,
Not to my knowledge, but I know that she has stockade fence in the back that would not show the fence, the deck. It would be a privacy. So it would not be something that they would see.
Okay. I'll close the hearing then. Would any member of the board like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
second.
Motion by Member Gergen, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passed 4-0. Thank you.
Thanks.
The fourth item on tonight's agenda is 429 LeBrun Road. Would the applicant please come to the microphone?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to recuse from this one because it's my firm.
Thank you. Would you state your name and address on the microphone and write that down on the sheet there?
Sure thing. So my name's Lauren Adornetto. I'm an attorney with Phillips Lytle. Our office's address is 125 Main Street in Buffalo, and I'm speaking on behalf of Mike Murphy and Laverne Mosey Murphy of 429 LeBron.
Go ahead.
Hi there. So our office submitted a variance request for the Murphys on May 14th. We provided copies of the site planner survey for the site at 429 LeBron, along with the variance analysis, the application form, some photos of the site. And we also provided an updated submission just last week to provide letters of support from each of the neighbors. So just by way of background, 429 LeBron is approximately a 2.8 acre lot. The Murphys have been there for 22 years. The home has been absolute labor of love for them. They purchased the home after it had been vacant for some time, and they've just been steadily improving both the exterior and the interior. So this lovely picture shows the prominent hedge that frankly goes around the entire perimeter of the property. It's about a 10 to 15 foot hedge that the Murphys installed themselves about 10 years ago, and they painstakingly maintain it so that it's a thick, lush hedgerow around the entire fence. So the purpose of the variance request is because the Murphys would like to install a 6-foot fence around the entire perimeter. And on the front, they would be putting that fence behind the hedgerow so that it would be largely invisible to the street except for an iron gate that would cross the driveway for egress. And the purpose of the fence from the Mosey's perspective is principally to create some security for their lot. They have a 22-year-old daughter named Asa who has autism, and she has a wonderful set of engagement activities in the back southwest corner of this property. Beautiful fruit trees and a gardening area and a craft location for her in their cabana. And they're looking for an opportunity to secure the lot, completely close it so that Asa can have some independence in the yard, but without worrying about any ingress or egress for her or anyone else. So that's the principal function of the fence from the Murphys' perspective. And the purpose of the variance is because they're proposing a 6-foot fence along that entire 222 front portion of the road that buttresses up against LeBrun. And so ordinarily the code would require a 3-foot fence there because it is in the front yard. And we are simply requesting an extension of that height limit to 6 feet in this case to get the security that they're looking for, and particularly here because no one will see it behind the hedgerow. And the supplemental submission we made to the board last week included letters of support from each of the neighbors. So 409 and 445 on either side, and across the way, the 3 houses that are along the frontage of the home would be 414, 430, and 440 LeBron, and each of those neighbors have submitted a letter in support that was included in our filing last Friday. If there's any other questions from the board, I'd be happy to address them.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicants? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Okay, we will close the public hearing then. Would any member of the board like to make a motion on this item?
Move to approve with the condition that the 10 to 15-foot hedgerow remain in place. If it somehow becomes diseased or destroyed, I would request or place the condition that the hedgerow be replaced so that there is a consistent and permanent street on the frontage.
Motion for approval with a condition. Member Gergen, would you like to make a second?
Yes, second.
Motion by Member Phillips, second by Member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Pass 3-0. Thank you very much. On the next item of today's agenda, that is 924 Klein Road. For an area variance, would the applicant please come to the microphone? Please state your name and address into the microphone, and also write that down on the sheet provided.
Hi, Paul Singh, and it's already there, so we built this house. It was an empty lot, and once we get the building drawings and the grading plans and everything, we submit to the building department. So they did approve this house as is, like where it's built, as you see. So after we put the foundation, they told us to give the foundation location survey. We submit that, so they said, yes, everything is good. They approved that, so we did the framing after that. So after we finished the house, in the meantime, the building inspector came there and he told me that they did made a mistake. They approved this building plan by mistake because it's supposed to be another 10 feet back. But they said like now, I don't have to do nothing. They will do the variance application by themselves, and I don't even have to come here for any meetings. So being that, I never follow up. So now we finished the house. We did all the finals are all done. So when we already sold the house, so I came here to get the CO, and now in the CO, it was there that I still have to come for the variance. So I talked to them, they said no. So now I did put the application in again myself. So here we are.
How long has that home been there?
Sir, we got the permits last year, 1st of August. And so basically in November, we have the foundation, the framing, roof, everything was done. So in November, the city told me that the building department told me that instead of, by mistake, I think like whoever checked the drawings, they made a mistake, but they approved like this. Like instead of telling me to go behind another 10 feet.
Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
So when were you first informed of the mistake after the foundation was placed?
No, sir. Once I put the foundation in, so we have to give them the foundation location survey. So they did that because if there is an issue, they would stop us so we couldn't go further. But they never stop us, so we did keep going, and then we put the framing and the roofing, electric, plumbing, everything is done. So when the inspector came there to do the inspection on the rough framing, then he told me that they made a mistake. So now he said, there's nothing we can do now, since it's the building department who did the mistake, and he said, you can just finish it up, and we will do the variance for your, for this house, so you don't have to be, you don't have to do nothing.
And when were you first informed of that mistake?
November last year.
Okay.
Yes. So I just, never follow up. But then when we sell the house, so we need the CO. So now the issue came up that the building department never put it in the application to get the variance from the zoning department. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'll stipulate that building department allowed this project to advance at no fault of the petitioner here. It wasn't until the petitioner was seeking his final certificate of occupancy, the issue of the setback resurrected itself, but building did allow it to advance to this stage.
Thank you for that. Is there any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing then. Would any member like to make a motion or have a comment?
Move to approve.
There was a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you. Next item on tonight's agenda is 4795 Sheridan. Welcome back. Thank you. We will reopen the public hearing on this item, and you want to share with us what has happened since we last discussed this item at last meetings.
I will. Good evening, Chairman Bray and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant. This is a continuation of the public hearing you held on May 14th, and the focus of our presentation this evening will be on what we've changed since that May 14th meeting. The site, as you'll recall, is approximately 2.06 acres, located at 4795 Sheridan Drive. It's zoned MFR5, and there's currently one curb cut onto Sheridan Drive, which of course is a New York State highway, subject to the jurisdiction of the New York State Department of Transportation. Next slide. A copy of the zoning map. It's important to note that both this parcel and the adjoining parcel to the west at 4785 are both zoned MFR5. As you recall, there's a national grid corridor bisecting here that runs through the golf course. You have a multifamily project here, and then, of course, the Park Country Club. Next slide. So in terms of a timeline, it's important to note we have made an effort to solicit some input from nearby property owners. Doesn't mean we've reached an agreement on what the project should consist of, but we'll explain how we did try to take into consideration that input. Mr. Savarino has provided periodic updates to the residents in the vicinity, including a letter to the adjoining property owner on May 6th, which, as you recall, he was on vacation till the evening before the hearing, an update letter on May 16th with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation we presented on May 14th, an update letter on May 31st, where we invited the 3 nearby property owners to attend an informational meeting held on June 6th. We appreciate that the 3 property owners did attend. Then finally, deliver an update letter based on the revisions to the project layout we've recently made. Next slide. So this is a comparison of the plan that we presented on May 14th, which is on the right, to the current plan, which is on the left, with the buildings highlighted in blue. The changes that we've made are as follows. We reduced the number of units from 26, which was here, including the large 3-story building, 2-story and 3-story building, to 22. It's important to note that previously we were proposing 26 2-bedroom units. Now we have 8 1-bedroom units, 10 2-bedroom units, and 4 3-bedroom units. And those 3-bedroom units are on the ends of each of these buildings. Here and here, you have a townhouse. Both built, one building is 12 units, building 1. Building 2 is 10 units. They look identical from the front because of the slope here as you head to the back of the site. We have 2 units on the back, which will appear from a 3rd floor, but only from the back side. It's also important to note that Mr. Savarino has worked with the architect that we've selected, Sutton Architecture. We've designed this building so we need absolutely no windows on the west side of the building that is oriented towards the adjoining property owner. So no windows on the west side of the building. As you also recall, we were showing a 1-story detached garage here that did comply with the setback. By modifying the project layout and reducing the density, we're able to move that garage so it'll be 24 feet away from the property line, exceeding the minimum setback. And because of the changes, including the reduction of the number of units, smaller building footprints, reduced number of parking spaces, we now have 1.25 acres of green space, which constitutes 61% of the project site, far in excess of what would be required by the zoning code. Next slide. I think I got all of this. So these are renderings of the building. It's important to note that these are actual photographs of a project located at Walnut Grove, which is on Union Road, directly south of the Williamsville Suburban Nursing Home to the back. As you can see, these buildings have a lot of vertical and horizontal relief, diverse materials. It's a little bit hard to see, but it has stone covered entranceways. And one important distinction between this building and the previously proposed larger building, 22-unit building, is there are only 2 balconies per building on the 2nd floor, here, and those balconies are in the middle of the building. So there's no balconies on the side. There's not a balcony for every single unit. So a total of 4 balconies, none of which will be directly oriented towards the adjoining property owner to the west. Next slide. So this is a chart that Rob prepared comparing the variances. I'm going to walk through it, and of course, if you have any questions as we proceed, please feel free to interrupt me. The bottom is the variances that we were originally asking for. Front yard setback of building number 2, we're asking for 26.6 feet based on a building height of 25 feet, 50 feet required. Side yard setback east of building number 1, we were at 27.65 feet versus 33 feet required. Lot area, we've always been at 2 acres in terms of the size of the site, but under the previous layout, that consisted of 26 units, all comprised of 2 bedrooms. The minimum lot area, which equates to maximum density, would have been 2.6 acres versus 2 acres existing. And then finally, we need a variance for the setback along the main wall, both buildings, or building 1, for the parking, and that we'll explain in a second. And then if you go to the top highlighted in orange, you have a comparison. So in terms of the front yard setback of building 2, which is the eastern building. From Sheridan Drive, we're now at 25.6 feet, and that's based on a mean building height of 27.58 feet. So the building height is not too tall and obviously much smaller. Side yard setback east of building number 2. Keep in mind this is from the National Grid corridor. 55.16 feet required. We're at 24.66. Lot area, whereas we previously needed 2.6 acres, we've reduced that all the way down to 2.12 acres. So it's a very slight density variance. And then in terms of the separation between the vehicle use area, the front of the buildings, 15 feet required versus 6 feet proposed. And we're doing that solely to comply with Appendix D of the Fire Code in terms of emergency access. Next slide. We'll walk through those one by one. So this is the front yard setback of building number 2. So from the property line, we're at 25.6 feet, but it is important to note that if you actually include the right-of-way, measure from the pavement, we're actually 45.1 feet. The reason we thought it was important to have both numbers is this will not interfere with sight lines in any way whatsoever for vehicles exiting the site onto Sheridan Drive. Next slide. Variance number 2, east side building setback. Again, from the National Grid corridor, we're at 24.66 feet versus 55.16 feet required, based on a mean building height of 27.58 feet. Next slide.
Before you go to the last slide, what is the difference on between that and the west side?
You mean here?
Yeah.
Rob, we have that coming up. What is the setback there? That is coming up. Yeah, so wait, you'll see it in 1 second. Next slide. Variance number 3, which we've discussed, again, lot area. 2 acres is what we have there today, based on the current plan with the mixture and the reduction of units from 26 all the way down to 22. 2.12 acres required, a substantial reduction compared to the 2.6 acres that was required pursuant to the plan we presented during the public hearing on May 14th. Next slide. And then area variance number four pertains to the setback from the front of the buildings to the parking area. Strict compliance with the zoning code would require 15 feet, whereas you can see these bump outs where those balconies are, 2 on each building, are at 6 feet. The sole reason we're asking for that variance is to ensure we can comply with Appendix D of the New York State Fire Code, which requires that fire trucks can get within the required distance of the front of the building in the unfortunate event of an emergency. Next slide. Rob, did we have that slide coming up with it? Okay, it's coming. So obviously this is governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria set forth in New York State Town Law, Section 267B3B, requiring you to balance the benefits that will be received by the applicant if the requested relief is granted, and weigh those against the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. We think the benefits are clear here. We've reduced the density. We're not seeking any setback variances from the western property line. We've focused the project as much as possible to the east side, which is adjacent to the National Grid corridor, and we have made some changes based on input received. So we don't think there's any detriments associated with this request, and obviously we do think it's a substantial improvement after looking at numerous modifications since coming here on May 14th. Next slide. 5 criteria, whether granting the requested relief will produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. It is important to note again, this project site is zoned MFR 5. During the public hearing on May 14th, there were some statements suggesting that it was zoned specifically for a condominium project that was previously contemplated on this site next door. That's not the case. We did look at the rezoning resolution. It's MFR 5 without any conditions. We've reduced the density from 26 units to 22 units. We're still proposing upscale buildings with a height of 2-story and a residential style roof. And then we will be providing extensive landscaping throughout the site with a focus on the western side of the site, and that will include the town's high impact landscaping standards along with the 6-foot fence. All those details will be worked out in the future in connection with the submission of a site plan application, which will require a separate public hearing to be held by the planning board. Next slide. Whether the benefits that we're seeking can be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variances we're requesting? No. The relief that we're requesting that has been scaled back is the relief that we need pursuant to the updated plan, whether the requested area variances are substantial, and as you know from previous presentations, the key is impacts, not quantification compared to the zoning code requirement. And here we've reduced the density, and we do not believe that granting the requested relief will result in any harm to the neighborhood. Criteria number 4, whether proposed variances will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. We've made a deliberate effort to avoid any impacts to the regulated floodway associated with Ellicott Creek and the regulated floodplain on the rear portion of the project site. We have submitted an amended Part 1 of the full environmental assessment form, which actually provides much more extensive information than would be required. We could have gotten away with just filing the short EAF. And then finally, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, and we have to acknowledge for the record, it can be viewed as being self-created. We have knowledge of the zoning code and the specifics that require us to come in front of you this evening. However, as you know, town law states unequivocally that that cannot be the sole basis for your decision-making. So we think the balancing test and 4 of the 5 criteria provide ample justification for the granting of the requested relief. Next slide. It is important to note this does require to issue a seeker determination as well. I've mentioned the fact that we submitted an amended Part 1 of the EAF. The project is in unlisted action pursuant to seeker. We also will require site plan approval from the planning board, needing an additional public hearing. That will provide us with the opportunity to demonstrate compliance with landscaping, lighting, stormwater management, etc. That stormwater management system to be implemented in connection with this project will comply with the stringent stormwater quality and quantity standards of the DEC, including the need to handle a 100-year storm event. We've submitted a geotechnical report, so we think we've clearly provided you with substantial evidence demonstrating that the issuance of a negative declaration is appropriate. Next slide. These are the 4 variances that we're seeking, and I don't think we didn't have the slide with the setback. I'm sorry, James, I think you have the old one. Yeah, so the setback, can we go back to the site plan? There we go. So the setback, first of all, 6-foot privacy fence here. The setback from the western property line to the western side of that building is 48.87 feet. And as I mentioned, the setback to the garage is 24 feet. None of which require variances. And the effort, again, has been made, as you can tell, to push this project as far to the east as we can.
The garage is 1-story and the building's 2-story, correct? So it's
That's correct.
24 feet to the 1-story building, 48 to the 2-story building.
Yep. And it's important to note that this building will have the appearance of 3 stories only on the back, because we have 2 units that are at the ground level because of the slope.
Does anyone have a question for the applicant?
I do. I have a concern here. The last time you were here, Mr. Hopkins, you showed us some renderings. Not that it's our job to critique design, which it's not, but the renderings that you had here last time were very attractive. The renderings this time, in my opinion, are not. I don't know if you, because you're reducing the size of the units, had to perhaps change the design, but to me, this is not anything that, to me, is at all attractive.
Okay.
And I have a problem with that, and I'm just wondering if there was a reason that you went into something like this as opposed to the design that you had before.
Yeah, so can we go back to show the color photographs? So, Mr. Schubert, this building has not been designed to Rob's exact precise specifications. Mr. Sutton, our project architect, this is the building that he's built on Walnut Grove on Union Road. So we thought it was best to show you in terms of the vertical and horizontal articulation, the stone on the bottom. It's not meant to be the exact appearance of the building.
What you had before was much more attractive.
Right.
And fit more into the site.
Right.
In terms of the country club being next door and everything else. This is.
Yeah, I think obviously when we get to site plan approval, we can probably enhance the building materials. But it is, what we thought was important is a much smaller building.
Smaller, but it's not attractive.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Rob Savarino, 4758 North French. I'm the applicant. Again, what we're trying to do here is have a building that has relief. And if you look at the previous design, it had the same relief. It just had better materials.
Right.
Well, quote unquote, better materials, right? I have not designed this. This was done on the fly. So what I needed to do is find a footprint that was smaller, that achieved our goals for reducing some cost, right, in exchange for less units.
Exactly.
Right. And then, but there will be some materials, you know, that reflect the area.
Not to interrupt you, but what I was going to say is I was willing last time to say, I approve this subject to the buildings being substantially in keeping with the design that you presented.
Right.
I can't say that now because the design that's presented to me is not anything that I could
But to address the concerns of the residents, we wanted to reduce the amount of units.
I understand, but I would rather have a better-looking building than something like that.
Would you, with increased units?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think we'd be willing to discuss some stipulations in terms of architecture.
Right.
Or could you come back with a better design?
Yeah, the problem is we'd like to proceed because we don't own the site now.
No, I understand.
Right.
Is there any more questions for the applicant?
And I also will note, and I know you pay particular attention to architecture, obviously when we get to site plan approval, we will need to submit fully dimensioned architectural plans with materials specified. And the planning department generally holds applicants to pretty high standards.
Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? If so, please come up to the microphone, say your name and address into the microphone, and make sure that your name is written on the sheet on the podium.
Good evening. My name is Colin Knorr of the Knorr Group PLLC. I'm an attorney. I represent Mark DeJory, who lives directly next door to this proposed project. I'm here tonight to lay out for the board some of the concerns that Mr. DeJory and his neighbors have with the variances that are being requested. First of all, as Mr. Hopkins noted, there have been changes to this project. Those were communicated to the residents just this Friday. We would ask that the board not grant any variances tonight, at least table this to the next meeting to give the residents more time to consider those changes. This neighborhood is primarily single-family homes on individual lots, and even an apartment complex that complies with the zoning ordinance is going to represent a sharp and significant increase in the density of residents. Granting a variance to allow even more units than are allowed under the ordinance is going to exacerbate that impact. The board should also be aware of another development the developers proposed right across the street at 4780 Sheridan Drive with 22 townhomes, and that's also going to significantly increase the density in this area. The density issue is important not just because of its impact on the community character, but because of impacts on traffic. This development and the other proposed development across the street are going to drastically increase the traffic that's entering and exiting the roadway.
Could you just address the application that we are talking about here, and not talk about the anything across the street?
Certainly, but it is something that the residents believe should be kept in mind because we're talking about what's going to happen to the community character. Even just limited to this development, we're talking about increased traffic entering and exiting the roadway, making right and left turns. These are the residents, their guests, contractors, deliveries, food delivery, all that kind of traffic that we expect in a dense residential area. This stretch of Sheridan Drive is already dangerous. There have been 3 serious accidents in this stretch of road in the last 3 months, including just this Saturday. All 3 of those required occupants of vehicles be transported to ECMC for injuries. We're not aware of any traffic study that's been performed or presented to the board to look at what the impacts on traffic safety will be if a variance is granted to allow this additional density. We'd urge the board not to grant any variances for the project until there's sufficient information to understand what the impacts on traffic and traffic safety will be by increasing the density.
Can I just stop you for a minute? Did your client attend the meeting that Mr. Severino hosted?
I can't confirm that.
Is your
My client will be speaking himself as well tonight.
I didn't realize your client.
The traffic study should also consider the impact that front setback variance. I know Mr. Hopkins stated that there would be no impacts to sight lines, but the residents believe that there should be an expert who attests to that. The other issues in the winter, the snow on Sheridan Drive is plowed. It goes up to the sides of the road. With that limited setback, there's limited area for the snow to be put. Snow piles may also create sightline issues in an already dangerous stretch of road and in the winter conditions that are most treacherous. Turn to the other variances, the side yard variance would put an apartment building closer than allowed under the ordinance to the National Grid transmission line property. This may present a safety issue. It may impact National Grid's ability to service those lines that provide electricity throughout the community. We believe the variance should not be granted at least until National Grid has provided some input on how that variance would impact their operations. And the front setback and the parking area setback, if they're granted, would have negative aesthetic impacts. This would be a two-story building that's significantly closer to the road than pretty much any other building on the stretch of transit or the stretch of Sheridan. And that creates this imposing or looming effect, this feeling of really dense development. Allowing the parking areas to be so close to the building, again, gives this idea of the uses stacking on top of each other and this idea of density that's really incongruous with this neighborhood of single-family, single-lot homes. Mr. Hopkins noted that there are town laws, the state town law that applies to these considerations. The residents believe there are detriments to the community character and to the safety in the area that can be potentially caused by these variances. We do believe that there are alternatives for the developer. As you can see on the layout, there's a significant amount of space still on this site that's going unused. So there do appear to be options for the developer to not need these setback variances, and certainly the developer could limit the number of units to those that are allowed under the ordinance. That would be an option to avoid the necessity of the variance. We appreciate your time tonight, and we would urge you to give some serious consideration to the concerns that the residents have raised, and we would urge that the variances not be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Carrie Wanamaker. I live at 4775 Sheridan Drive. It's 2 houses down from the property that we're speaking of today. I would like to request that the variances tonight aren't going to be approved for the developer. The ones in particular that I'm concerned about are the population density one and the front yard setback. And to put a large amount of people on such a small property I think traffic is probably our biggest concern, because we've seen some really horrific accidents right in that very spot in the last few months, ones that have been very dangerous and people have been severely injured. So one of the issues that we have is when we are making a turn out of there, traffic moves super fast. So even if you can see, what's coming at you, if you put this building even closer to the front property line, that's very concerning. And I know they're saying that the sight line won't be compromised, but you add, 6 feet of snow into that mix when we do have a snowstorm. It's very, very dangerous. It's dangerous for us, and our house is set back much, much further. Another thing is, I know this is maybe a moot point, but the current wildlife that resides there, when you pave half of it, it is going to displace a lot of the animals that are there right now, which is fine, it's understandable, but it would be a lot less if it was a single property home. There's hawks that live there, there's obviously deer, which are constantly getting hit by cars on Sheridan as it is. A lot of birds, we've had a lot of herons this year. So that's gonna be disrupted for these creatures as well. Adding 52 parking spaces into that small little area is going to be pretty significant when you pave that area. Also, another concern that we have is a population of renters rather than homeowners. We didn't object to the townhouses across the street. There are owners that live on the property. It's a little more concerning when we have renters that are coming in. It might be a little more transient. You don't know who's going to be living there. There's not as much of an investment in the place that they're residing. Especially now, I'm a little concerned as well about the change in appearance. It just seems to be attracting maybe a different clientele than a nicer property might bring in. I think a big concern that we all share as neighbors, we've all come together and had the same concerns that putting in such a super dense area of population into this small property of about an acre is concerning, because it's already super dangerous with traveling in and out. You add 50 more cars to the mix, it's gonna make it a little more dangerous when we try to pull into our own driveways or when we try to pull out of our driveways. There's only a center median, there's no signal anywhere near that particular area. And I know we're not talking about the other property across the street, but adding those additional residents, it's kitty corner from there. It's very, very close. So it's just gonna make it a very risky area to enter and exit our properties from. But yeah, that's kind of where we stand. I think collectively as neighbors, this is something that's very concerning to us because it almost seemed like an opportunistic portion on the end of the developers to come into an area that was originally zoned for a single family, and then it was changed when they decided to do the condos for a multi-family residence. And then when that project fell through, it was an opportunity to then turn it into an apartment complex, when originally we were in support of nice high-end condos. So thank you for listening today, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Here's kind of my issue, is that there was a meeting that the residents were invited to attend. The residents voiced their concerns, changes were made to accommodate those concerns. And now we're back to kind of the same stuff I heard last month. So, you know, I guess just candidly, if you had your druthers, you would have nothing there, right?
What was that?
If you had your druthers, you had your way, you would have nothing on that property.
No, I think we all agree that we'd like to see a nice single-family home developed on there. You know, we don't need to see a vacant lot overgrown with weeds, but we do need to see something nice there that's not completely paved over.
How long have you lived in?
10 years.
And did you know the zone? Were you aware of what this was zoned, this lot was zoned when you purchased your home?
No,
Did you make any inquiries?
no,
Did you know who the owner was?
not of that land, no. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ed Marecki. I'm at 4765 Sheridan Drive, and I'm proposing that there be no variances given to this property. It will change the character of the neighborhood, for one. Two, the property to the builder at this state has a sold sign on it. That's not true. The property is basically still in the ownership, I believe, of Dr. Pratt. And if he doesn't get a variance, the contractor doesn't get a variance on this, he could back away from this project with minimal inconvenience to him. So that's one of the concepts I'm looking at. If the property itself gets any type of variance, well, basically I would like to see a smaller footprint of this property. And as you mentioned, the property today may look a little different than what we've seen last time. I believe last time we were here, there was going to be 26 properties, and of the 26 properties, 6 were single families. And what I heard today was 22 families, 2-family, and 22 2-family, 2-bedroom units, okay? And I received a letter saying it was going to be going down to 22 units, and 8 of these units will be 1-bedroom units. I mean, things are being mixed up here. The property, I'm at that property at 4765 for 30 years. When I moved there, the property was originally zoned, and it was owned by an individual named Trainer. It was zoned as a single-family unit. Then it was changed because condos were supposed to come. Now, I think it's a pretty good trick. You turn around and you say, okay, we're going to change the zoning. We're not putting the condos in. We're just going to put apartments in it. So I have a little problem with that. It was originally for single families only. A single family zoning.
So it's no longer zoned like that. That is not the purview of this board.
I understand that.
This board is only looking at the variances requested under how it's zoned now to as be requested by the applicants.
Right. So basically, I'm looking at no variances at all. And what Mr. Schubert brought up, it looks different. It looks a lot different. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark DeJory. I'm the resident at 4785, which is directly to the west of the project. Ms. Phillips, to answer your question, yes, we did meet last Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, and this was not discussed at all. This what they showed here
Well, my understanding is that this was created in response to the residents.
Yeah, but to interrupt, our concern was to have no apartments there, to have condos or townhomes. That's how we relayed what we thought would be a better usage for the property, not a smaller apartment complex, owner-operated or owner-occupied condos or townhomes. That's what we were conveying there. So to give you a timeline on this here, someone from Savarino dropped an envelope in my mailbox on Friday, which I didn't look at the mail until Saturday. So all of this had to be prepared Monday and today. Didn't get a picture of any of this. And then I hear today from what the meeting was supposed to be. Now there's going to be 3-bedroom apartments in there. That's not even on this piece of paper that you guys have. So they're changing on the go here. So anyways, getting back to the variances, from my understanding, the state law is that they have to prove a unnecessary hardship, that they're unable to reasonably do this project in the dollars and cents. So when we met with them, they said that they couldn't reduce anything here because of the cost and the foundation of the back of the building, and there was no way that they could change it. Now all of a sudden, miraculously, they can change it to fit it in, probably because they're going to use different materials on the building over there. That aside, all of the variances are substantial. 50% reduction in the space on the east side, 50% reduction going towards Sheridan Drive, 50%, more than 50% in the parking. They want to go, the variance says, or the rules say 15 feet, they want to go to 6 feet. Now 6 feet, you got to have a 3-foot or so walkway. Where are you going to put the snow? How are you going to put landscape in front of that? So I don't think they're being totally honest on how they want to do that. And one of the rules that they have to prove is that this doesn't affect the character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is single-family, owner-occupied homes. There's no apartments from North Forest to Mill and past. There's no businesses in there. They're single-family homes. So it does drastically change the character of that area. Really, 2 days wasn't enough to prepare for the changes that they're proposing here. So I think just to conclude, obviously we're opposed. We'd like to see this builder or another builder use their property for single-family home, condos, townhouses, as long as it's owner-occupied, people that have skin in the game.
Sir,
Yep, go ahead.
I grew up on public assistance. And when you say, renters don't belong here.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. That was not any words that came out of my mouth. What I said was, we'd like to see single-family, owner-occupied homes like the rest of the area. We don't want to change the character of the area. I didn't say anything about what you're saying, so those are from you, sir.
So let me ask you this. The new number of units, so 22 that are proposed,
Which is 2 more than what's supposed to be on that property, but go ahead.
yet less than what was initially proposed. If those were called condos, under your analysis, you would now have no objection to this.
They're owner-occupied.
Okay, so if we took this exact revised layout and just slapped the name condo on it, you would have no objection.
As long as they're owner-occupied, that's my personal view. I can't speak for the rest of it. There's 6 people here from the neighborhood, and I got 6 more signed petitions. So there's 12 people that we were able to contact that are opposed to this, not just me.
I'm just trying to get to kind of the root issue that you and the other residents may have. So again, if you would accept the revised layout, you would not oppose any of the variances if these were condos.
Well, I think it is a little close to the street, so that may be an issue, but, no, if they're owner-occupied, residents that have skin in the game, so to speak, I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
One last thing is, I hope that we're not gonna make a decision on this tonight, because, again, we only had a couple of days to prepare for this. Thank you.
I live on the east side, and nothing has been said about the east side. The Castlebrook condominium, which is a very lovely upscale development. And the neighborhood, this is too congested, and the traffic. Yes. I am president of the homeowners. We were never, nobody from Castlebrook ever received any notification of this. Kathy Hudson.
And what's your address?
212.
Thank you.
And it's just really not acceptable. It will change the whole area, and it's a beautiful piece of property, and it should be developed properly.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to the comments?
So again, for the record, Sean Hopkins. I mean, I think the most important point in terms of a lot of what we heard this evening from the residents was that this is really about who resides there rather than the scope of the project. And obviously, this town or any other town has jurisdiction to regulate who the actual occupants. And what I mean by that is those who own a unit versus those who rent a unit. I think we can drive around the town of Amherst and nearby communities and see many examples of multifamily projects.
Mr. Hopkins, if I can interrupt you, this has nothing to do with rental versus ownership, period.
I think some of the.
For us, but for us, it has nothing to do with
Okay, I
that.
just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, that's irrelevant.
Okay, but I wanted to respond to the comments, so I just wanted to
all
make
right.
that clear. In terms of the updated layout, a couple of the comments were that we hadn't seen this when we met with them on June 6th. That's absolutely correct. Based on the input we received, we made an effort to reduce the scale of the project and reduce the density and reduce the magnitude of the variances, including an increase in green space. And then finally, I know, Mr. Schubert, your comments have been dealing primarily with the architecture. We actually have the old plan.
I have it right here.
Can we put it up and just, yeah, thank you.
I have it right here.
We're going to hand it back to you to hand up.
Big difference.
So I'm going to let Rob address that, because let's see if we can reach a consensus there.
If you look at the,
Give your name again.
thank you. Do we have you have Sutton's? Here, Sutton's.
Can you pull up, James, a presentation from last month? It might show better. May 14th.
That's May 14th. That's May 14th.
Oh, it's here, Rob. No.
Oh, that's,
I didn't
oh,
bring
I
it
see
down.
what you're saying.
That's the old, that's one from last.
Yeah, that shows both of them.
That's on the PowerPoint we have today?
Right, that was the 4-unit building.
Yeah, there was one previous to that.
Yeah, there it is. And that would have been the larger 22-unit. And I think that's the one, Mr. Schubert, you were focusing
Right.
on.
Let me talk a little bit about Rob Savarino, 4758 North French. I'll talk a little bit. When you look at the, it really comes down to materials. There's no doubt about that, because you still have the same, basically the same roof line, basically the same eaves, basically the same relief, but you don't have the stone in the center part, as you can see there, and it's really about color. So,
More defined columns.
yeah, so the columns that are the bulk that hold up the apparatus for the balconies can be beefed up. We could add AZAC trim. It's the same, although it doesn't come out in this color photograph. It's basically heavy gauge vinyl with shake impression. So if you see in the eave, you'll see it have a little bit of an impression to it. And it's a commercial product. It's the same as this, but this particular photograph doesn't have the shake impression. So I think when you take shake, which is the, you know, the yellow looking exterior, tan looking exterior, add shake to maybe the eaves, complement it with stone other than just watermark or wainscot, and beef up the front entrance with columns, I think we could really improve upon, because the box is still the same. We just couldn't, I couldn't take the smaller design and have a rendering done in the amount of time.
Did the same architect do both of these?
No, this architect right here is James Fahey, who I've used to produce another product on North Forest. The architect here was Dave Sutton. So when you look at a lot of projects Dave's done, they're really attractive projects. Now, that might be opinion, but it could be easily added and enhanced by the virtue of the materials.
The other thing I want to know, Mr. Schubert, we actually didn't switch architects. Dave did this as a favor. We needed a footprint.
Right.
Showed a 10 or 12 unit building. He had one.
See, it's easier to swallow the requests that you're making, if at least if you're putting something in there that looks
Absolutely.
nice.
Right.
But if you're gonna put something in there that looks like this,
Sure.
no, it's
So,
like,
so what about this idea? I would welcome the input from everyone here, including Ann and Nora and James. In terms of the architecture, obviously, we know we can enhance this, and we know you'd like to see it. Given that I don't believe you meet in July, is that correct?
Correct.
Would you be willing to consider approving the variances subject to a condition that we need to come back and get approval of the architecture of the buildings? That will give us the time to do that, work with the planning department, and we'd be comfortable with that. We know we're taking some risk, but it would put us in a much better position in terms of needing to buy this property. And I do want to note, one of the residents indicated we don't own the site. That's correct. We advise them of that. I don't know why there's a for sale sign. I think that's brokers
Or a sold
trying to
sign.
show they sold her a sold sign. So if you'd be willing to consider that, we'd be willing to do that.
what was it again, you said willing to consider what?
What?
What did you want us to consider
So
approving
approve
it?
granting the variances subject to a condition, and have the condition be worded very clearly that we have to come back in front of you for architectural approval at your August meeting with enhanced plans.
And if we don't give you the approval,
We're done. We're stuck. I mean, we're confident that we can make these buildings look much nicer.
I may have asked this last time, but has there been consideration to making these condos or townhomes?
Yeah, that we simply can't make the numbers work in terms of condos or townhomes. And that's because of a wide assortment of factors. And really the best evidence of that is there was a project that was completely approved. I think they had an approved offering plan.
Couldn't
And
make
they
the
couldn't
numbers.
get it going, and construction costs and interest rates have gone up dramatically since then.
So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I feel uncomfortable with putting in a condition that we review the architecture, just because I don't think that's, at the end of the day, our purview.
What I could offer, Mr. Chairman, we have a design advisory board. Their mission is specified in statute as advisory only within our mixed-use districts. You can certainly ask them, even though it's not recognized in the statute, for assistance in helping you decide on what the character should look like and the materials, and let them offer an independent view on character based on any input you wish to propose, such as you want it to substantially look similar to this drawing. It's just a thought. I don't know if the petitioner's attorney would support it, but
I mean, we're going to be flexible, it's just time frame and obviously then satisfying the concerns about architecture, and getting that architecture per se doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of this board, but Mr. Schubert makes a good point.
I understand that, but it's easier to swallow that you want all these variances, at least if you're putting something in there that goes along with Castlebrook, Park Country Club, DeJory's house next door. If you have something that's attractive, that looks, you know, I don't mean to be critical, but this is not attractive.
Yeah, all I was going to say, Mr. Schubert, was to acknowledge that I understand why that's your position.
I mean, it's just, I can't in good conscience say, oh, this is fine, and let's approve it. Let's approve the variances, so you could build something that looks like this.
However, we did accommodate a lot of the concerns of the neighbors, and we also acknowledge that this photograph, you know, in the end, we would have improved this anyway, but we had a hearing to come to. We had to find a design that worked on the site to make everything work. And did this miss the mark? It sure did. But I vow to create a facade that is reflective of the area, and it's good marketing reason to do so.
You see, again, I have no problem with the variances if you're putting something in there that fits in the neighborhood. I have a problem approving variances if you put something like this in there.
Sure. But then wouldn't the condition that I'm suggesting be acceptable?
That's already pushing it too far. I mean, I don't know.
So the one concern that resonated with me that the neighbors brought up is regards to the front setback. Could you review that one more time for the board?
Yeah, so can we go back to the current presentation? And then can you go forward a couple slides? You'll see it. Couple more, you're getting there. There we go. So building 2, which is a 10-unit building, which is here, why am I not getting on the screen? We're at 25.6 feet from the property line and nearly 40 or 45 feet from the right-of-way. It is important to note the town actually has what's known as a clear vision triangle that regulates where a building can be, and this does comply with that in terms of sight lines.
So I want to correct Mr. Hopkins, that only applies to corner intersections. What would be required if there's concerns for line of sight would be a line of sight analysis by a transportation engineer. If you have concerns, you could condition your approval that such line of sight analysis be substantiated by a traffic safety engineer, and if it can't be substantiated, then that request would be null and void. Or I don't know if you want to put a time set on that particular variance, that it be done at the time of site plan approval before the planning board.
The front yard setback, I think we're confusing two things. In terms of sight lines, I know that building's not going to interfere with sight lines, as you're pointing out. You're talking about when you're actually pulling into Sheridan, out from Sheridan Drive, regardless of whether there's a building there.
I'm talking about exiting the driveway and being able to see safely in either direction based on the rate of speed and the number of lanes. That would be substantiated by a traffic engineer. And
I think we can clearly comply with sight lines. It's relatively straight, although anyone who's been on Sheridan Drive readily has to acknowledge at times it's difficult to take a left-hand turn. It will be. We're not taking exception to that.
Is there any more questions or comments for the applicant?
No, so let's do this. While we have a contract and we'd have to speak to the attorney, who we know very well and is fairly reasonable, we know this property is owned by the doctor and he hasn't done much for the past couple of years. We've had some concerns tonight that we only updated the plans on Friday, which is true. We did only update the plans on Friday. Let's leave this hearing open. Come back and we'll address the concerns and have the update elevations.
Okay.
There's no meeting in July?
No meeting in July. Next meeting's August 13th.
And again, leave the hearing open so residents will have the opportunity to comment, because who knows, there may be some additional minor changes.
We have a date in August, the,
August 13th.
When is it?
August 13th.
Oh, it's early in August, okay.
it's my birthday.
My daughter's too, so.
And then what we'll do is anything new that gets submitted, it'll be submitted well in advance of that deadline.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn until the next meeting in August 13th.
Motion by member Gergen, second by member Schubert. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Next item, 4224, 4256 Ridgely Road. Member Schubert has to abstain on this item. Will the applicant please come to the podium and clearly state his name and address into the microphone? Yeah, we'll do number 7 and 8 at the same time.
Thank you. Good evening. James Baglioli. I'm an attorney for Benderson Development, 570 Delaware Avenue, Buffalo, New York. This board has seen this project before. It is a modification to the prior approval. We'll start with the special use permit. Back in August 2023, the zoning board gave us a special use permit for a Costco fueling station. This is a new redevelopment on this site. It's a 164,000 square foot Costco. It was 120,000 square foot Dick's, some warehouse down at the bottom, and the key bank is existing. The board gave the approval. Since then, Dick's has modified the site plan, and Costco has also modified the site plan, so we're here for a change, and I believe for the better. Next slide, please. So the main change for the special use permit is that the gas station got moved back off the main road. So it is now set back between the two commercial buildings. There are other item which we will discuss when I get to the next part of the application, is the Dick's is going to 2-story, so it went from a 120,000 square foot footprint to a 60,000 square foot footprint. And the sports fields, which are in the back, got moved to the front. Besides that, there's practically no change to this project. The town originally wanted us to put the gas station back there, so this is an improvement and more consistent with what the planning department wanted. Next slide, please. This is the gas station. It looks exactly the same as when the board approved it last time. Next slide, please. And I did submit a letter going through the 8 criteria. If the board would like me to go through those, I can again. But they remain exactly the same as when the board approved it last time. We own all the abutting property, and I believe pushing the gas station back to the 290 is a visual improvement for the site. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
I have no questions on this special use permit. Does anyone else have any? Is any member of the audience here to speak on this item?
Ma'am, you'll have to come to the podium, identify yourself by name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jerry DeCosmo. I live on Meyer Road, the bottom there. I was just wondering how many gas pumps there are at this gas station?
Mr. Baglioli?
There are 16 fueling stations, and there were 16 fueling stations the last time. It remains unchanged.
Thank you. All right, we'll close the hearing then.
I'll move to issue the special use permit.
Second.
I checked with them. So we had a motion by member Phillips, second by member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passed 4-0. And now
One abstention.
Sorry, passed 3-0 with one abstention. Thank you. And member Schubert's going to be abstaining from this item as well.
Thank you. Same project, same property. Next slide. Same site plan. Next slide. Again, the gas station got moved to the back. Next slide. So at the last, in August, the board granted 3 variances. There to the right, this is the plan that the board approved last time. We're asking the board to renew the 3 variances because they will expire in August, and we're planning to start construction in September. So, and one of the variances up at the front, the 20 feet is changing, and I'll go over that in a minute. The board granted these variances most notably because there's a jog in the road in this area. A majority of the site meets the front yard setback, and in this case, because of where the road jogs in, it doesn't. We're unable to push back. The area in red is a pipeline easement that results in our inability to push the building back to actually meet that setback. The board granted these three variants. Next slide, please. The one change, if you zoom right here, is this variance, which was 20 feet, is now 17 feet, but it is not a building anymore. It is actually the sports fields. And just the shape of the sports fields results in about 3 more feet. Again, we still can't push the building back. You can see the pinch point at that area going back into the pipeline easement.
What do you mean by sports fields?
It's a Dick's House of Sports. So Dick's House of Sports is a building and it has a large sporting area where you can try out the equipment you're buying. So if you have a child that's in baseball, they could take the bat, the ball, batting machine, practice hitting with the bat, and then buy the bat. So if you go back one slide. Previously, the sports fields were located here, and it was a 120,000 square footprint. Dick's is going to a 2-story version. Next slide. So the sports fields got moved to the front. It's actually a much more attractive look from the road to see the athletic fields than the side of the big building. So it's visually an improvement. The one other variance we're adding to this is Costco wants to add a pedestrian connection down the middle of its parking lot. They have a very large parking lot. If you've been to a Costco, it's very busy. They want to provide a pedestrian refuge. They were under the code. When they're required to be put in, they have to be 16 feet wide. We're not required to put this in. We're voluntarily putting it in. We can't fit the 16 feet because of the fact that Costco is at the bare minimum amount of parking they're required to take the site. If I put in the 16 feet, we'll lose over 60 parking stalls, and they can't go here. So when we go through the criteria, there's no way to get that pedestrian safety feature without getting the variance. If we're forced to, we'll have to remove it. We really don't want to do that. It's not a necessity by any manner. Next slide, please. I did go through the 5 criteria. It's in your letter. I'm not going to redo it again. We talked about undesirable character, changing the character. There is none. For the first 3, you've already determined that. For the 4th one, it's a raised pedestrian walkway we're adding for safety. It's completely interior of the site. It impacts no abutting property, and in effect, it's barely going to be visible from the road when you're going by the site. Next slide, please. Whether it can be achieved by sought-after variance, the first 3 variances this board already approved. The 4th variance, again, the pedestrian walkway, as I noted, there's no way to install this. If we don't get the variance, we'll just have to remove it, and we'd like to put it in. Next slide, please. The next 3 criteria don't change. The variances are not substantial. The board already determined that for 3 of the variances. The variance will have no adverse effect on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. In fact, the town rezoned this site for this project. They did a full seeker. They issued a neg deck. The gas station, the Costco, everything was there at the time. And the hardship, we're going to actually say it's not self-created. This is a very odd site. It's got that pipeline, which kind of, it's easier to work with rectangles than sites that are square. You got the 290 in the back. You got the pipeline. We can't move the buildings around like we normally could. We had a rectangular piece of property. And even if it is, that's not a determinative criteria, and I don't believe these variances have any negative impact. It's going to result in a very attractive redevelopment of that site.
Does any member of the board have a question? All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Come to the podium, please. State your name and address into the microphone.
Joe Wojtowicz, 35 B. Cyrus. My first comment is I'm sure the audience, residents would appreciate it quite a bit if we had access to all this information that the presenter had given here. I looked on the website and looked for information like this on there. I didn't see anything but the basic agenda. It doesn't give all the information we're talking about, so it's harder to critique it right here. And another comment I have is on the developers always looking for variances and saying the project will absolutely not work unless we have a variance of 20 feet here. So I heard it mentioned somewhere of 120,000 square foot warehouse or building size. So from that, they're saying that, well, if it's 110,000 square feet, the whole project is just going to die. We can't do that. We have to have another 20 feet here. I really find that hard to believe. And if they're going to design the whole project with some arbitrary building design and try to plug it in there, that's really poor design concepts, because you're given limitations on what the parameters are and all the setbacks on there. You start with that first before you design anything, and then you come up with the largest building size that can fit in there. That's the way they should do it. They wouldn't have to come through here and everybody begging for variances continually when they should be designing it to that criteria and not looking everybody to bend over for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else ever hear from the audience to speak on this? Would you like to respond, or?
I will. These are, when you have tenants, they have certain size buildings. This is a redevelopment site, not big in green space. We actually took 14 buildings down, if you're familiar with this site. The board did previously grant 3 of these variances. So we're just asking for you to renew those variances because our time is ending. And the last variance is actually for pedestrian safety measure. If the board does not grant it, we'll just remove it, which seems dangerous. So I don't completely understand the comments, but I believe we meet all 5 criteria for these variances.
When were the variances previously granted?
When were the variances granted?
Yes.
August 2023. So just not 10 months ago.
All right, thank you. We'll close the hearing. Does any member have a comment or would like to make a motion? A motion by Member Gergen, second by Member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. That was the last item on today's agenda, except for we have the first item that was known as here for when we originally had it. 9 Turnberry Drive. They left? All right, well, we'll adjourn it to next month,
To August 13th.
to August 13th.
Motion to adjourn to August 13th.
Motion by Member Gergens, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. All right, could we get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Member Gergens, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. That's 4-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.